I've just put the kettle on. I've got my pile of every book that I read in September here. So let's get talking about, I think I read 10 books in September, which is quite a good haul for me. That's not a haul. I didn't buy any of these in September. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about whether any of them were any good. Let's talk about what genres they came into. Let's talk about if you liked them, whether, I don't know, I liked them, that sort of thing. The usual September roundup, as I do every month, I guess, in a different format. So I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea, and I will get back to you once my cup of tea is made and I am ready to talk to you about these books. So let's go. Okay, I've got my cup of tea, my books are ready, let's go. So, the first book I read was The Coworker by Freida McFadden. Now, this is a book that, I don't know, was kind of in the mediocre level for me on the Freida McFadden. So if you didn't know, I've been reading quite a lot of hers recently, mainly for a few reasons. One, I want to do a video at some point where I'm like, I've read a lot of Freida McFadden, here are the best ones. And also, they've been coming up on my Libby quite a lot. So the audiobook for them has become available at my library, and I'm just like, yeah, let's just keep picking them up. So The Coworker by Freida McFadden is without a doubt bang average in the line of where Freida McFadden books come. It's no Housemaid, but it's no One by One either. If you've not heard of The Coworker, it's about a woman that essentially goes to work one day, and somebody that she has been going to work with for a while now isn't there, and it's a bit suspicious because she arrives on time every single day and she's not told anybody. Then she goes missing for a bit, so then she becomes suspect number one because everyone's like, well, why did you know that? Why do you know these things? And then some other clues come out, and essentially she becomes, as I said, the main suspect. And it all kind of twists, obviously, in the middle. There's a big, oh my gosh, did you realise that moment? I had my suspicions about the twist, but I couldn't necessarily have guessed it. But in general, I thought The Coworker was fine. I think it was, as I said, slap bang in the middle of Freida McFadden's best and worst. Now, I talk about Freida McFadden's best and worst, like her best and worst writing, but realistically, the writing's always going to be the same. It's just how good the storyline is, how good the twist is, whether the characters are well thought out. So the positives from every Freida McFadden book is she does write characters that feel like human people. They don't feel like some sort of fantastical human that has unbelievable powers. Sometimes some of the things that she writes are cringy, but what I mean by don't have fantastical powers is simply that, you know, they speak like human beings. They have little things in the way that their speech works that makes them very much human, and that to me is something that I like in Freida McFadden's books. They're short paced, they're quick, they know where they're going, they know what they're doing, and The Coworker was exactly that for me. So I'd probably give this a 3.75, maybe a 4 out of 5 stars on my out of 5 stars meter, with 5 stars never being got by anybody after like 2021, because I can't find any book in the world that is perfect, because no book is perfect. So that's The Coworker by Freida McFadden. That was the first book I read in September. The next book on this list is Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kwang. Now, I don't know if this was the second book I read in September, but it's the second book I'm telling you about because I've forgotten what order I read them in. Yellowface is about a woman whose name, June Hayward, yes, witnesses her rival Athena Lou die in a freak accident. She sees her opportunity and takes it. So essentially, she literally steals her manuscript to steal her story, to then write a book based on her friend's kind of ideas. She then makes a massive kind of success of this book, and it's an absolute storm and everybody's raving about it. And then people start to get suspicion, and then things come up online, and a lot of this is about social media and the toxicity of social media. And I think there's supposed to be some sort of underlying story here about race and about inequality and all these sort of things as well. But I think maybe naively wasn't really thinking about those things. Yes, they're mentioned in here. They're mentioned about the fact that because Athena Lou is a person who is of colour, she is an Asian woman or an Asian American, she gets a little bit more sympathy. She's not going to get the hate, because then if people hate, they are called racist rather than just hating them for individual things. And because our main character, June Hayward, is a white person who has some kind of Asian history, she is kind of apparently, I don't know, culturally appropriating or something like this. I don't know. I didn't get those elements from it. I was trying to avoid kind of reading too much into that, because as a white male, it's very hard for me to have any opinion on race or anything like that. So I avoided that. And if I avoided that, then basically all I got here was a story of a woman that wrote a couple of books, kind of stolen from a friend who got a lot of vitriol online for it, and that is it. Not much else really happened, unfortunately. It was kind of dull, kind of slow paced. I was like, is that Is that it? There's also a weird bit at the end where it's like, oh, this stuff kind of happens, but doesn't really happen. I'm like, okay, that's fine. You'll have noticed this featured actually in my most recent video of books from TikTok that I thought were overhyped. So I think if you've watched that, you'll already know I didn't rate this one too highly. So that's Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. It's the second book on this list. If you haven't yet checked out, a lot of people have liked it, so I wouldn't take my opinion as the kind of de facto opinion, but that's just my opinion. I thought it was a bit overwhelming, and I've seen some other people say that as well, but then obviously when you say something's bad, other people who thought it was bad are also going to jump on that bandwagon as well. Next on this list is Murder at the Matinee by Jamie West. Now this is the sequel to The Death on the Pier, which Jamie West kindly sent me a year or more ago. And Death on the Pier focused on a main character who was essentially a playwright called Bertie, who then inadvertently becomes a detective during a murder during a play, if that makes sense. So a murder happens during a play. The exact same thing happens here. There's a murder, I think quite quickly after the play, actually. In the first one, it's during the play, and people are like, oh, that's such a good death. And then everyone's like, no, it's actually dead. Whereas in this one, it happens after the play, but there are suspicions it might happen during the play. Do you know what I mean? But it's the same sort of thing. And there's a lot of Agatha Christie vibes in here. It's kind of, there's a group of people, there's a group of suspects. Bertie and a real detective go around and interview them and speak to them, have their suspicions on who it could be, and then at the end, gather everybody together to talk about and discuss who is the actual criminal. And I kind of loved it. It's kind of like one of those cozy murder books. Nothing that scary happens. Nothing dark happens. All the bad stuff's already happened. So it's just basically Bertie going around, interviewing people, talking to people, trying to find out the mystery. And it's good fun. It's not going to blow your mind. It's not going to be the best crime you've ever written. The front cover is stunning. The front cover for Death on the Pier is stunning. I have the original red version, but I think the new version is blue. All of them are brilliant front covers, so if you're a person who likes front covers, likes design in general, you'll enjoy this. But other than that, I would say, yeah, if you're into your kind of cozy crime, is that a thing? This is definitely up your street. It's really, really interesting, and the ending is all quite satisfying. There's also an underlying kind of love story kind of going on, and Bertie himself is gay, and it's set during 1934 when obviously people couldn't be gay. Not obvious as in they shouldn't be now, it's in everybody knows that by now. And it essentially makes it for a really awkward relationship between him and this other male character in the book who I don't know, you can read it yourself and find out. So yeah, Murder at the Matinee by Jamie West, a really, really cozy, fun crime, and Jamie himself is an absolute legend. Actually went to go see Hamilton, and he actually does what makes them move, the structures in the play. That's his job, to make sure that they move in the right area. So yeah, Murder at the Matinee. God. Count the lines. That's why one's when you get over 30, kids. Anyway, the next book is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Now, this is another cozy book. So this one's called a cozy fantasy genre. Now, we're breaking down genres into everything. So the first thing I always say when I talk about this book is people are like, what is cozy fantasy? So cozy fantasy, what I've depicted from this book, essentially means it's fantasy in that there are orcs, there are creatures, there are other lands, but it's cozy in that it's all set in a coffee shop. It's all very close together. There's no quests. There is outer lands, but they're never really gone to. And it's all set in this one little area with a few little people. And there's nothing that dark or scary that ever really happens. The worst thing that happens, essentially, there's like a gang or like a local group of people that are like, you owe us money because you're in our town. And this woman who leads it, called Viv, is an orc. And she's essentially like, I've literally quested for decades, killing people, fighting wars and armies. I'm not going to be like belittled by a little man like you. And I love it, and it's brilliant. It's about friendship, it's about story, it's about coffee, which is prime. It's also about product and about kind of business and her setting up business and this sort of stuff. It doesn't go too deep into the business element and the selling elements or anything like that, but it is that kind of, this person walks in and says, oh, I can make muffins. She's like, sure, get them on the menu. You can work for me, let's make muffins. And I love that sort of thing, and there's different blends of coffee and all sorts of stuff. So love it. I'm looking forward to the sequel. I hope the sequel involves more coffee. I hope it involves more business. I love the idea of Viv. There's kind of the relationships in this are really nice as well. So because it's set just in a kind of a coffee shop, you're very limited as to where you kind of do what you can do with the plot. And the plot itself isn't fast paced. It's more about the people's conversations with each other, the progress, as I said, of the business. So that's why I'm interested to see where the second one goes, because this one was all, as I said, about the setting up of things, and the kind of finale is the kind of, we're a success. So what's the second going to be? So we'll see where that goes. But Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Another great front cover. I love this front cover as well. The original front cover was like a drawn one, which I have no kind of problems with people drawing on front covers. That's not what I mean, you know what I mean? But this one visually I prefer much more. It's just more my style. So Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. He's the latest book on this list. So I finally read my first Cormoran Strike book in September as well, and that was The Cuckoo's Calling, which obviously is the first book in the series. This is a series I've had my eye on for a long time for two reasons. One, my parents really enjoy it, and two, I see a lot of people whose opinions I respect in books enjoy this as well. The other reason that I've had it on my my list for a while rather than actually picking it up is it's just long, and this series gets longer, and I have heard a couple of people say they are a little too long getting later on. I generally enjoyed this. This one is obviously setting up Cormoran Strike as a character, setting up the additional kind of characters in the world, setting up what the kind of idea behind this is. He's basically a private detective sort of thing, and he goes out and solves things for people on money, but he's recently got out of a relationship. He's recently gone private. He's really low on money. He's living like in his office, all this sort of stuff. And it's kind of really gritty, and I like that. The best thing about this book for sure is the characters, is Cormoran Strike himself, is the characters that he goes along with along the way. The audiobook was really impressive. I really enjoyed the audiobook because there's some characters in here with some big personalities, and the audiobook did a fantastic kind of job of that. I'm not sure who the narrator is, apologies, but if you are an audiobook person, I would recommend trying to get this one on an audiobook as well. Generally, the plot there was a little bit underwhelming. I enjoyed where it was going. It just felt like it kept going for a long while, do you know what I mean? So whereas similarly to Murder at the Matinee, it's about essentially Cormoran Strike going and interviewing people to try and find out the mystery, and the mystery is essentially I can't remember what it is, as a lawyer comes to him and says, there's this person who apparently committed suicide, but I don't think they committed suicide. Here's some money, go find out what actually happened to them. And that's really cool, and along the way, we're talking about kind of Cormoran's personal struggles at the same time, which is the best element of the book, I think. And then the finale is fine. I'm looking forward to the sequel because now I'm more into the characters. I feel like I can focus on the rest of the plot more, and we'll see if there's anything more in the sequel that I enjoy. When I'll ever get round to that, I don't know. Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, who is J.K. Rowling, is a great kind of first introduction into the series. And I can kind of see at the time when this came out, people were like, oh, it's good. It's good, but it's, not the best, which is probably why she gave it the Robert Galbraith name to begin with, until she'd established the series and people no, this is actually a good series, because people may have thought, it's J.K. Rowling, this is awful, you're awful, you just wrote probably the most successful series of all time, and then you're writing this, what's going on? But no, it was good. So, Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. Robert Harris's Fatherland is the next book on this list. So this is book 6 on this list. So I've got 4 more to go after this. Yes. So, Fatherland by Robert Harris. It's a book I picked up from a charity shop based purely on the kind of premise of it. So it's essentially set in 1964 Germany, but it's an alternative history where the Nazis won the Second World War and Hitler's still in charge, and then a body comes up in the outskirts of a lake, or the lake on the outskirts of Berlin, and it kind of opens up this conspiracy and opens up possibly a big thing that may break Germany altogether. I didn't really get it. I didn't really get what it was in the end. I think I lost interest in the middle. Started off quite strongly, but just the whole book felt a little bit underwhelming. I was expecting something a bit grander, but it does feel very kind of one person going around doing this thing, and it's not really, it doesn't ever really feel like it gets bigger or gets scarier or anybody important gets involved, i.e. we never meet Adolf Hitler. So I was a little bit underwhelmed by that kind of aspect. I think generally the writing's always fine with Robert Harris's writing. It's never particularly superfluous or, I don't know, relaxing or informal. It's a very formal language. It is a book written in 1992, which I did a video over on my TikTok about how it's crazy that I'd never heard of this, and it's been out for literally 32 years, which is before I was even born. I'd never heard of it, and what was I doing then? Obviously nothing, because I would have just been a seed in my dad's bowels. But anyway, Fatherland by Robert Harris was absolutely fine. Nothing more than that. I think I'd probably give it a 3.75 or a 4 out of 5 because, it was fine. I didn't rate my other books, so The Cuckoo's Calling, again, I'd probably give a 4, maybe a 4.25. Travis Baldry's The Legends and Lattes, I'd probably get a 4.25 or a 4.5. Murder at the Matinee, maybe a 4. Yellowface, maybe a 3.75, 3.5, that sort of thing. But Fatherland was good enough. If you're interested in kind of historical fiction or you've read Robert Harris before, I'd still recommend it. It's still got an interesting premise, an interesting concept. But if you're looking for something that's really, really exciting, something like Stephen King's equivalent where it's about JF Kennedy getting assassinated, but not because it's alternative history or something. I've not read that one, but I've heard that one's really good as well. If you're looking for something like that, this is probably a very similar sort of thing. So check it out. That's Fatherland by Robert Harris, and that's my 6th book on this list. Look how sick that mug is. I don't know if that's backwards for you. The next book is The Clever Dutch Diet by Dr. Michael Mosley. Now, this was actually a book that was given to me by a colleague, so I don't know if she thinks maybe I eat poorly or, I don't know, my farts stink or something like that, but Either way, the Clever Guts diet is about your kind of microbiome. It's about your gut health. It's about what's good to put in your body, what's not good to put in your body, what happens when you put bad things in your body, and what happens when you put good things in your body, like the actual chemical balance, what that does then to you, which is really fascinating. And what was good about it is it didn't feel preachy. None of it was you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. It was, if you do this, that's not great for you. Here are some alternatives that may be better for you. So, for example, if you really like bread, which I do because I've had a sandwich like every day for lunch for my entire life, maybe try sourdough bread or try crackers or try things that kind of give you that satisfaction of the feeling, of the filling, but are a little bit healthier because of the way that they're produced. So really, really interesting book. There's also recipes in it at the end, which at some point I do need to kind of have a read through and see if there's anything in there that's not too confusing, not too dull either. I think one of the biggest problems with health and that sort of thing is trying to make things still have flavour and still trying to enjoy your food. Unfortunately, we've grown up in a culture where we've had such a vast array of different foods now and such a vast array of bad foods for us that our natural instinct is to try and eat things that are kind of sweet and are full of flavour, but sometimes natural and good things for you aren't that flavoursome. So that's kind of what this book is about. It's about your gut health. It's about if you kind of, I don't know, you have IBS or you have flatulence issues or your health or your general attitude or you feel tired or things like this and you don't know why. A lot of that might be covered in this The Clever Guts Diet by Dr. Michael Mosley. I'd probably give this a 4.25. I thought it was good. I thought it was useful. It's a non-fiction, one of the very few non-fictions I've ever read, but it's someone that did make me feel quite interested, and it was really, really, really quick read as well. It was actually like a 3-hour audiobook or something like that. So, Clever Guts Diet by Dr. Michael Mosley. The next book on this list is The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and this kind of sits at a similar level to The Co-worker in kind of Frida McFadden's repertoire, though I think maybe a little bit higher. I did enjoy this one more and actually put a video out on my TikTok where this reinvigorated my interest in Frida McFadden again. She nailed the formula, she nailed the fast pace, she nailed the kind of twist, that sort of stuff. Yeah, there was some odd elements to it, and there was some odd elements to all of her books. There's all a little bit of a, these people aren't quite human because they're all a little bit psychopathic, but that's fine. That's what makes them fun and easy to read. The Teacher covers essentially two storylines. It's one of an older woman who is a teacher at a school, whose husband is involved a lot in the story, and then the one of a younger pupil who previously, last semester or last year, was essentially accused of getting jiggy with it with another teacher who's now gone off to prison, that sort of thing. And that's what we've got going on here. And I can't really tell you more without spoiling the plot, but essentially it gets quite dark, and then literally halfway through, I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, oh, that must be the end. That was a really short book. And I was like, no, you're only about 50% of the way through, because there's a point where you're like, well, that's surely the end. But no, the next 50% is a complete flip on its head, and then kind of, I don't know, kind of trickles out a little bit. The second half probably isn't as exciting or as interesting as the first half. In general, it's not the most fast-paced, it's not her best, it's not the most amazing she's done, but it really, really did invigorate my interest again in Frida McFadden's just kind of easy writing style, fun twists, like psychotically crazy fun characters, that sort of thing. That's The Teacher by Frida McFadden. Again, if you're into Frida McFadden, you'll like this. If you're disappointed by One by One or anything like that, I think this one again is a little bit better. Some people have said it's the worst book they've ever read in their lives, which is absolutely fine. But I thought it was fine, and I enjoyed it, and I'd give it a 3.75 or a 4. You know, I've just realised I held up 10 books, and I didn't actually finish one of them in September. I finished it in October. I finished it yesterday, so that doesn't count. I'm recording this on, God knows what the date is today, the 3rd of October. But the last book, therefore, then is Thunderclap by Laura Cumming. And this is the last book that I read in September. And it's another non-fiction, which is quite interesting. I read 2 non-fictions in September, which, considering I'd only read like 1 non-fiction all year, is quite good going for me. Thunderclap by Laura Cumming is an interesting one. It's one I would never pick up in a bookstore. It covers the memoir written by Laura Cumming of a painter called Karel Fabricius. Now, he is from like 1600s Netherlands, and he did a painting, and Laura Cumming enjoyed it when she was young, so she then studied him and other people around him, and that's what it's all about. It's about art, it's about her perspective of art, what art has the impact on her. Her father was a painter and an artist, and it talks about him and some of her childhood memories of him and art in her childhood memories, etc, etc. And as I said, it's about the furthest I'd go from ever picking up a book, but it was my September pick of the month, or I think it was actually my previous months. I've completely messed all of that up. The whole, oh, I'll pick one book per month and I'll read it sort of thing. I think I've done it out of order. But anyway, it was one of your picks for me to read, so I picked it up, and like, it's a difficult one because I'm not going to say bad pick, horrible book, what on earth, that's awful, no. But it's just not my kind of cup of tea at all. I'd never pick up an art memoir book at all. I have no interest in art, not no interest. I'm like, if somebody gave me a really pretty painting, I would be like, wow, that does look really nice. But I wouldn't go to a museum and be able to understand kind of the concepts and the terms and the passion and the emotion thrown into art. I think it's all too big for me. I'm not kind of artsy enough. I don't look into things that much. So this book kind of didn't resonate with me at all, unfortunately, but there we go. I would probably give this like a 3.5, 3.75, and again, not because it's bad, it's actually wonderfully written, it's very powerful. If you're interested in art, this would be brilliant, a brilliant read, because it talks about art in general sometimes as well. For me, it just wasn't something I'm that interested in at all. So 3.75 or a 4 out of 5. From me for Thunderclap by Laura Cumming. And that rounds off, though I suggested maybe not at the start, my 9 books that I read in September. So here are the 9 books I read in September. We have Thunderclap by Laura Cumming. We have The Teacher by Frida McFadden. We have The Clever Guts Diet by Dr. Michael Mosley. We have Fatherland by Robert Harris. We have Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. I'm getting drowned in books. Murder at the Matinee, Upside Down by Jamie West. Yellowface by Rebecca F. Kuang. And The Coworker by Frida McFadden. So 2 Frida McFaddens. There was historical fiction here. There was fantasy. There was 2 non-fictions. There was contemporary fiction. There was crime. There was thriller. There was historical fiction. All of it. It was great. It was good fun. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you've not yet subscribed, what the hell are you doing? Subscribe, like, comment, enjoy my videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.